Hello, welcome to another episode of the Design Lab 1.0 Pro. So this particular tutorial is specifically meant for beginners. And in this course, you're going to learn interesting facts on how to generate concepts of a simple logo. So like you all know, we don't teach specifically tools. We don't teach how to design logos. What we teach you is the concept behind the tools and the concept behind the logo, where to use, when, and how to use. So with this in mind, it becomes easier for you and seamless to create your concept over time as you practice and get better. So in this concept, we're going to learn 3 categories of concepts in logo design. Number 1 is the typography and typography alignment. Number 2 is the shape and iconography. That practically could be shapes in iconography. Number 3 is color and color gradients. Now, we go with the first one and we get to understand this. We are not practically going to define these things, the terms you are used to online. I'm going to define all of this the way a layman will understand, because this course is specifically meant for beginners. So what is typography? Typography is simply the letters or words you use in your logo. That's typography. Okay? The text and word you use in your logo and how you use them. Now, the typography alignment is how you prepare this design text in a way that they have categories and are separated with either thickness or the colors as their words, distinct hierarchy. A hierarchy is what makes one different from the other. For instance, a text can be thick and a word in a logo can be thick and the next word could be thin. A word could be big and the next one could be very tiny and small. So that's the hierarchy in the both typographies. So now the shape in iconography means there are different business and brands, and there are icons or shapes that support those brands. For instance, if you're making a brand for a tin tomatoes brand, you're making a logo for them, you are not going to use sharp-edged shapes. You're going to use rounded corners or spherical shapes. That makes it easier for the persons purchasing these products to communicate easily psychologically and feel appeased by this product. So the shape determines a lot in design. So you use the wrong shape, you get the wrong result. So the color also, on the other hand, is very important and plays a very important role. If you use a bad color in a good logo, you ruin the whole thing. For instance, you're making a brand for the same brand kind I mentioned, and you're using a blue color. The colors that are permitted for food brands are reds and greens, in most cases orange or yellow. These are not color theories and everything you need to use to see out there, because there are color theories that will stipulate you to use a particular color for a particular brand. That's not what you do. You use the color on the brand based on the design. If it doesn't work, you switch it towards the close color to that particular brand. That's very important to note, and I will talk about that in another class. So now these colors could be selected and making work easier for you. So the color gradients, in the other hand, are multiple colors in one. So a color gradient is a color or 2 colors that are merged in one shape or that are added up in one shape. It could be 3, it could be 4, it could be 5, depending on how you could control that. So that is it about the color. And the final one, we will be dealing or building a logo ourselves. So we'll be building a simple logo, a simpler logo, so you can follow along easily with the concept we have explained here. So very importantly, we need to head up and start building. So for the best practice, I'm going to make this look as simple as possible. So so you can follow up and grab. This doesn't limit you from using any tool you want. We are using Illustrator, but you could use any tool at all, okay, to achieve this same concept and submit your assignment. So first of all, we are going to hit on typography. Use the text tool over here. If you want to watch some other tutorials about the tools we are using in Illustrator and how to set up this and how all of this work, it's very easy. You could see most of those tutorials in our channel at Graphics Studios on YouTube. So we are going to start up with the typography and typography alignment. So let's get to understand how these things work and the mistakes you've been making in the past designs. So let's assume the name of this brand is. When you type a text, you could hold a shift and adjust the size and it will adjust proportionally. If you don't hold the shift in Illustrator and you're adjusting the size of a font, it will stretch it like so, and this is not what you want to do with your text. I see most designers have these same issues I just mentioned now. So first off, we type in a name which we want to use. Okay, so let's use Doolittle as the brand name. Okay, so now Doolittle is the brand name. In typography, there are things you need to understand. You need to choose a font that works best for the particular brand you are building for. Not like other fonts won't work, but there is fonts that works best. And this is the best practice on how I select fonts. So watch closely. So first off, I type the first letter and I separate it from this. Okay, and I select that and I go to my typography tool, which is over here. Okay, then I type in or scroll down to sort for other fonts, or you could easily click on the font space, select on it again, click on this font space and click your arrow down key to select fonts you want to work with. So once you get another font that you like and you're comfortable with it, do not just start using it, because that's not the best. So let's keep selecting until we find something cool. Let's say we love this. Okay, what we do is hold the Alt key and separate it too, and continue your search from where you stopped. I love this too, and we can separate this from this and continue our search from where we stopped. Okay, I love this too, but no. Okay, this okay too. The thickness a little bit more than the first, and that's Poppins. So by so doing, it becomes easier for you to separate these fonts specifically and look at them from the perspective of the brand you are designing, and just picking just one and then working with that. I love doing this anytime I'm making design. This is the first step I go through before I start up any design. Fine, I love this too. So let's take, for instance, we selected all of these 5 fonts. We can now easily decide or push all 5 to the left, then pick out only one to start working with. So we have our font for Doolittle and we can focus closely to it. This is the first step in typography, picking your fonts. The next is considering the thickness of the font, if it is too much or if it is too less. If it's too less, you could add more thickness. If it is too much, you could use a lesser version of it, a lighter version of it, if that font provides it in its family. So now we head over to type in the motto of this particular brand or the tagline. This is what I do in most cases. Clients don't provide you the tagline, but in most cases, most brand works well with when there is a tagline below it, depending on the kind of font you are using. So for the tagline, we could just type in something very appealing. Okay, so this time around, we are not choosing the same font. For the best practice, I like using Poppins for my fonts for the taglines. Now, this is where I see many young designers mistake it. So whenever you're making a tagline, make sure the tagline is too tiny, not like so. Making a tagline like this is assuming that the tagline is an extension of this name. So it's assuming that this is too little where it fits, not that this is actually a tagline. Because there is no much hierarchy in text here, in the typography, okay? This is almost the same height. So we need to reduce this, but look at the problem most designers fall into. When we reduce this to this, and this is okay for what we want, we can't just place this at the left align it, or place it by the right aligning it, or placing it by the middle. In most cases, this doesn't even make any sense. So what do? First off, we could add a little bit of thickness to the font because it's getting a little bit tiny. And we want a situation whereby this will be scalable. If we use this, when you scale this down, when you scale this design down, it might be difficult to read clearly, okay? So we use a little bit thicker version of this font. Then we head over to our typography section. We select on this particular text styling, which stretches our text without causing issues. So we could set this to 300 pixels and hit enter and see what happens here. You see that? So it is extending the text by spacing each letter accordingly, making it evenly distributed to size from the part this font starts to the part this font ends. So as simple as that, we select on that. We could increase it to 400 because we wanted something close to the font we have already. So we have this, we can start from the beginning and stretch it now till the end. Okay, how do we stretch that? Hold the shift key and then drag accordingly. If you do like so without holding anything, you are going to extend this the way you don't like, and this is going to skew. We don't want to skew this, so hold the shift key in Illustrator and extend it, as simple as that. So we are done with that, and that makes it as simple as ABC. You could use other font types, okay? Let me show you some other font types we could use. Like something like this is nice, but when you're using stylish font like so, you don't make this text capital. The first initial of each word could be capital and the rest will be small letter. So let's say we are it, and we say fill it. So fine, we are using a stylish fonts for the footer text. I call this the footer text. It could also be called the tagline. You make sure that you use only capital letter for the initial and the rest could be small letter, just as I've done now. So but for now, I'm okay with the text we have already, and I'm cool with this. So we are good with our typography, and this is as simple as that. And this is the problem we have been facing. So stretching your text like this makes it very unique and seamless. But if it is a font that doesn't support you placing the text below, or if the client say they don't want it, you can then delete it. But having it there makes the work look more like a logo. So that's number one step, typography and typography alignment. In alignment, you don't left align these stuffs in a way that it doesn't make much sense. Okay, left and align it, or right align it, or centering it. You could also do something like this, but to me, I suggest everything starts from the beginning and touches to the end of the letter name itself, or logo name itself. So that is basic things you need to know for the typography. So the next thing we need to know is the shapes we use for designing. So now we're going to create practically 3 basic shapes, one of which is a box. The next is a circle. Don't bother how I create these stuffs. I have courses on that, and I'll be making more courses on that. Okay? So the next, we are going to use a hexagon or polygon shape. So why I drew these shapes is not because we want to use them to make a design, no. But I want to use these shapes to explain something to you. Why we build. So we're going to drag this shape in. Using this shape for this particular brand, you see how it feels to this brand. Doolittle is a brand that sells wares, as we can see from the tagline, which explains the objective of this brand. So we have a shape that is our box and the edges are sharp. Now, assume we separate this from this angle and we replace this shape with a circle, and we separate this from this particular one and we replace the last one with a polygon. So with this in mind, look at these brands closely, okay? Look at these stuffs closely, and you have to judge yourself which particular one works best for this brand. Okay, I'm not saying you should judge from this particular one, okay? It's based on the design you are making. This is the next thing I do after typography. I make shapes for each of these which I have created and observe them closely to understand which one works best for this brand. So the shape you use determines the kind of logo and the shape is going to have. So for me, it goes well with the circle. I love that so much. So I can now discard all these ones if I want, and then proceed with my design. So with this in mind, I could just separate this from this, and then I can delete this and then start doing my design. While looking at the typography, looking at the shape, it will give me a concept while I'm making my design. It's as simple as that. So let's recap. First off, we selected a typography and we choose different kind of typography to choose from, and we picked this one as our best. After we are done selecting multiple typographies, then we put a text below it, which is the tagline, and we aligned it properly, which is very important. Next, we created 3 different shapes, okay? A polygon, a square shape, and a circle. You could use 2 simple shapes, a circle and a square space shape, okay? You could use those and create the 2 concepts and observe them closely. So we selected the circle to work well for what we wanted to. So that is basically it on how to start up your design. So iconography, shapes in iconography is very important. Okay, use shapes, observe them closely, and know which one works best for you. Okay, so next we are going to get into color. I don't want to take this too deep so it won't look a little bit confusing, but follow the simple steps it will guide you seamlessly towards creating a simple logo. We are going with a simple version this time around, a lettermark logo. Okay, so don't bother about that. We'll be coming to complex versions. If you want to do more complex designs, in the past I have prepared some complex concepts of logo. I've broken them down in a very seamless manner. Check out our YouTube channel. You're going to see most complex stuffs there to deal with. So as simple as this, we are done with typography and we are done with the iconography. As simple as that. So the next we move over to the color and color gradient. There's something that is here but that you guys are not seeing. Okay, so there's something I hid here. Let me delete this. You're gonna see. So I'm gonna provide you my color palette. This is my color, both my gradient color and my main color. Let me zoom closely so you can see. So all these are my colors, color gradients, and my base colors, which I use in creating my color gradient. Today, I'm going to teach you guys how to create your own gradients colors and how to use them on shapes. So we have not started creating the logo itself. So let's try to create our own gradient color. So to create a gradient color, you could simply create a box or a circle shape like we have here. So we use the box. And next thing you need to do, head over to your gradient tool, whether in CorelDRAW, Photoshop, or Pixel Lab. Head into your gradient tool. What I'm going to teach you is the concept behind the gradients, why most gradients are cool and most gradients are ugly. So head into your gradient tool, okay, hit on the gradient. It will create a gradient automatically with black and white. So next thing you're going to do is this. If you already have a color or two colors which you want to work with, what you do is, let's separate this from here. For instance, we have these two colors or these base colors we want to work with. So select on the particular base you want to work with, select on the gradient tool, select on, double click on this, then select on this tool, okay, which is the color picker. Okay, you can use that now to pick a specific color from here. Select the second one, do the same thing, select the color picker, you pick the second base color. So by so doing, we have created a gradient with the color we have that is already existing. That's number one step to do that. So number two step to create a gradient if you don't have the color tool already is what? Select the gradient tool, hit on it again. Whatever color is existing, it will pop out. Select on this and select on the color you want from this angle. So we could select the orange for the left side of the gradient, and we select the darker orange for the right side of the gradient. So as you can see, we have a cool gradient over there. We can do this with green, we could do this with blue, but the concept behind a gradient is using colors that are closer to each other. Now, let it not be as though we are doing this from this particular area. Let's do it from a particular color tool you are used to. Maybe that's what you're going to face when we start. So we are going to create a box. First off, we create the first shape. The next one, we just want to make this simple. Let's make this a black color. So we create the second shape, which we want to make the second gradient tool. Okay, so first shape we select on this particular tool over here. Okay, double click on it, and we pick our color, our base color, the color we want to be in the right, we pick it. Okay, we pick the same color for the left, the same color for the left. Now, when you pick the same color for the left, go back to that place, double click it, and we can now reduce or increase the size of the color from here. Why we do this is we want this particular shade to be darker, this particular shade to be lighter. What we do is what? Reduce this a little more, it becomes darker. Then you can see the differences between this and this. Now if we hit OK, we are good to go. So we have the two shades of color that we want from here. So you can select on your shape. Let's create a new shape. Let's make this black again. I just want it to be very simple so you understand. So you can select a shape and use the color picker tool to pick in this stuff the same way we did it from here. Okay, select on this. You can pick your color tool and pick this particular one. Pick your color picker tool and pick this to be to the right, or pick this to be to the right. Then pick your color tool and pick this to be to the left. Okay, that's the step to follow. The next thing I want you to understand, or I want you to know, is when you are making a gradient, why most are ugly and most are cool is this simple trick. Watch closely. So now we've made our gradient. This is cool because I made it to be cool. Now what if your color grade is like this? We may not see this closely. Let's make this a darker color. Let's pick a darker, let's pick red. Very good. So you can see what's going on now. You see? So when you're using this on a shape like the circle over here, we select on this and pick on this tool. We use it on a circle like this and have that issue in here. Look at what we're going to be faced with. This is just practically what we are actually seeing, the separation between these two gradients, and that is not what makes a cool gradient. Many persons pass through this issue. Let's use other color gradients we have available. When you want to pick a gradient, an already existing a gradient like the one I'm going to provide you guys, what you do is select on the shape you want to put the gradient, pick the color picker tool and pick on the gradient. Okay, pick on the gradient. This gold, pick on lighter gold, pick on this, just pick on any gradient you want to work with. So as you can see, we picked on red, we can see the shades in there. We don't want these lines to be available. We want it to be what? Seamless, so that you don't even know where the lighter red joins or intersects with the darker red. So to do that, you simply drag your gradient, select on the shape, first off, select on the shape, then select on the gradient tool over here, if you are in Illustrator, okay? Select on the gradient tool and shade it from the beginning till the other edge. See what we have is now seamless. But when you shade it from the inside, you have this issue. shade it is becomes smaller, you have this issue. But when you shade it from the outside to the other edge, you are giving in more rooms. Let me show you what happens here. These particular shades are giving it more rooms to shine. You see? Now this is expanded like so, and you're having more room to what? Understand that this is a gradient, but you are not understanding exactly where this color is pointing at. That's the same thing we have from here. We're going to practice it here too. Select on it, select the gradient tool, and we are going to shade it from the outside to the other side. So making everything look seamless makes it looks interesting. Yet another thing you may need to know is you could select on this particular the curvature tool and point from this part, not actually the curvature tool. Using the pen tool, okay, delete that. Using the pen tool, point from this side, point from here, and point down to this place. So merge it here and select the two shapes. The both shapes are selected. You can hit on the shape builder tool and hold the Alt key. Click on this part, it removes that other part. Now we can style this other shape which we just created, okay, by hitting on the curvature tool, double clicking on this anchor point, and we have the shape created. Why did we create this shape? Now, if we go off here, we won't notice anything is going on. Now, when we select this shape and use the gradient tool and point this shape or this shade to come in a way that it reflects, you see the seamless effect we are going to get. So you could use gradient on gradients to achieve a very seamless and nice concept. So see what we got here too. So we use it in most designs that I've made, and this makes your work look a little bit professional. This is a problem we are facing too. So that is it for color and gradients. Okay, so we've learned typography. In typography, we learned that you need to point out text or different kind of text which you need to use for a particular design. Okay, you pick out all this typography style from different font families. Okay, now next you choose the text you want to use for the footer, which is the tagline or whatever you could call that. Next, you use different shapes on this particular stuff you have created to see how it looks and choose the particular shape you want to work with. The next, you apply colors to this to see how it feels. Okay, so we could select this and apply the green color to see how it feels too, depending on the brand you are working with. So as simple as that, we are done with the 3 levels or categories which I want to touch. For beginners, if you follow these steps, it becomes more easier and your design becomes seamless. So finally, we are going to create the logo itself. So in this practice, we are going to create a simple lettermark logo with all these concepts we have mentioned right in front of you. Okay, so let's wait. So since this is a lettermark, we are going to make a design, okay, to portray the brand initial in this particular brand icon. So as simple as that, we could then select the styling we could apply to this circle to make it work, and we now use the initial to apply in the first initial of this word to make it a little more customized than it is. So first off, let's try to create our concept. Okay, I would like to go with the D we have already. So let's drag that out. To separate, to convert text to shapes, simple thing you need to do is to head over to Objects, hit on Expand, hit on OK, make sure Object and Fill is selected, hit on OK, and it's automatically converted. That's one step to do it. Next step to do is to hold the Ctrl Shift and 0, O, not 0, O, and it converts to a what? An expanded shape. An expanded shape means you can now control it as though it is what? A vector shape on its own, no more a text. And you can't add text to this, but you can add to this one we have over here. So as it is still grouped. So to ungroup it, you could go to Properties, okay, then hit on Ungroup, and automatically it's ungrouped. You could select this one at a time. So we ungrouped it so we can delete the rest of this and have only the D. We don't need these two. We don't need these two. If you want to delete a particular part of a design, let's see if that's grouped. In most cases, some text are not grouped like so. So to delete it, select on it and select on the eraser tool from here. Select on the eraser tool and erase that particular part. It's as simple as that. So we have our first shape. What we need to do is to make this shape look more customizable and extended. So select on the shape, select on the direct selection tool. Direct selection tool function is to select specifically what you want to select or the angle you want to select. The selection tool selects everything in that angle. So for instance, you want to select this, you can select everything here. If you select a particular part, it selects everything. But direct selection tool, if you select a particular part, it selects only that part and leave the rest. As you can see, we can see the two anchor points. Let's zoom closely. We could see the two anchor points here, but we can't see it here. But when we use the direct selection tool and select in the middle, we can see the two anchor points and then control them seamlessly. So we're selecting on this part. We can now extend this with your arrow back. Just extend it a little bit, and that is cool. That's number one step. Number two step, we could create a shape here. Okay, the same shape of this, the same size we have in this one. Let's make it like so. If your text size is bouncing and it's not following according to your move, is bouncing or jumping to different pixel sizes, head over to view and make sure you disable snap to pixel. Very important. So when you do that, you can now space according to your preferred pixel size. And very importantly, if you are working with strokes in any design you're making, make sure you come over here in transform and enable the scale corner and scale stroke effect. Why you do this is because, let me zoom out. When you enable a stroke, okay, when you make a stroke, and let's add a stroke size. Okay, we have this stroke size and we disabled this, the scale corner and scale stroke. When we select the tool to select our stroke, when we select the whole stroke to reduce the size or increase the size to whatever we want. For instance, let's make this let's point this out again, like so. Very good. So when we select the stroke to make it lesser, the stroke doesn't adjust accordingly. See what's going on? To an extent, it will cover the whole space. If you increase it, it doesn't adjust accordingly. Now look at the difference between this one and the other one we are going to create now. Okay, so as you adjust this one, it maintains the same size even if it is large or small. And that's not what we want. So this is exactly what we created. But when this is selected and this is enabled, the scale and the scale stroke is enabled. When you scale it up, it maintains the size according to the size of shape it is becoming. If you reduce it, it maintains the size according to the size of shape it's becoming. So it's no more scaling according to what it is initially. And this is what you need. So to enable the transform, head over to window, you can scroll down until you see the transform and you can enable it from here. So whenever you're working with stroke, make sure the transform, scale, corner and scale stroke effect is all enabled. So now we have this tool. We can decide to just place this design here, or let's just do a little bit of tweaking. Let's do a little bit of tweaking here. Okay, let's make sure this shape is still the same size. So just tweak in your work or your design the way you like. Okay, make sure stuff look nice, and that is it. So now we've tweaked that part. We can select the anchor point, the curvature tool, and point to this part to stretch it a little further. Why we are doing this is we want everything to be on a flat range. You see this part is flat, we have to make this part flat too. If we are having it like so, then the design doesn't make any sense to anyone. So now once we're done with that, the next thing we can just adjust this to the edge to start from this part, or let's point it down. Let's just stretch it down till it gets to this point. Fine. Fine. So now we use anchor point again, and we use to point this part to this edge, and we also do the same to this part, to this edge. Very good. So we are understanding that we are having a little bit of issue here, so we make sure it is well adjusted. To make sure everything is correct in a correct size, you could use measurement. Just draw a line above it. You can see the measurement. Okay, once you see the measurement, you can now select on that particular part and address it according to the measurements. The same goes to the bottom part. So you can now delete this as we have a perfect measurement from there. Now we have this shape, but it is not joined together. If you separate this, this is separate from this other one. How do we join it together? Select the whole thing together, then click on this, which is the Pathfinder. If you can't find the Pathfinder, still go to the window, you see the Pathfinder, you still click on it, Pathfinder, it will appear. Then use Unite, okay? Hit on Unite, it will unite the two of them, joining the both of them together. That's one way to do it. The second way to do it is to select everything, use the Shape Builder tool, and automatically draw the line in all these angles. Automatically, it unites it. So now, this is a single shape. So we creating the shape is just a concept that we want to fill in this particular gap. We want to create a negative space out of this particular circle. So we select on it, expand it a little more, and we push it into the shape we just created. So this is too tiny. I want it to be a little more thicker than it is. So what we do, we use the stroke and increase, as you can see from here. Increase the stroke size. You can't see what I'm doing from there. Let me zoom out. Okay. So we increase the stroke size. Okay, as it is increased, forget about the color that is in the background. That doesn't matter much. We can change that. You can switch that from here, change it to black again, and that is okay. As it is switched, you can now head over to the object again, expand it, click on OK. All right. Now when you're done with that, click on object again, expand it again, and then go to the Unite tool and hit on the Unite. Doing that twice creates an avenue for it to be united, even though it is a stroke on its own. So now we have a basic shape and we have the size we want. Now we want to separate this shape. I have tutorials on how to separate shapes from like what we did previously. I want to separate this shape from this circle. What we do is select the both shape and the circle at the same time. Head over to this part, select on the Shape Builder tool. This time around, we are not uniting this, we are removing this shape. How do we do that? Hold the Alt key on your keyboard and then remove the shape from there. Simple. Now the other way I used to do this when I was an amateur is this. When I place this above this, I select this particular color and make it the background color it is. Automatically you can see what is going on here, but the shape is still there. So now when I'm done, I will now select everything and import it to Photoshop, then use the eraser tool to erase it. That was when I was an amateur on this. So but for now, just select it. You are no more an amateur. Select this and select the Shape Builder tool. Hold the Alt key and remove the part you don't want. You can further style this circle. Okay, you can further style the circle by selecting points. You could select this point with the anchor point. You can curve it a little. Okay, select this point, curve it a little. Select this point, curve it a little. Okay, what we are doing is practically making stuff look different from whatever we could see from elsewhere. Okay, there's something we forgot to do, very important. We are going to separate this. We need this in the letter time. So make the color what you want it to be. Then we select this, do the same thing again. Use the Shape Builder tool and remove these parts. Okay, then we can leave it like so. Next, we could create a shadow below this to make it look a little bit more realistic. So to create a shadow, select on the pen tool. Let's go closely to this. Point at these parts. Point down here. Point down, 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 down. Why we're selecting all these parts we're selecting is we are going to remove the parts from this particular shape by selecting the Shape Builder tool, holding the Alt key and removing the parts again. Now we still have double of this. We have one and we have two. We can separate this from this, as you can see. Okay, so now we are going to fill this with a dark color, a little bit of dark color. Okay, now we are going to make a gradient styling for this. Select the gradient tool, select this part. We are going to make this part dark, and we are going to make the top part dark too, but the top part we are going to make it 0%. Okay, and leave the bottom part the way it is. Now we go back to our tool, hold the gradient tool. Now we can pull the task from this particular part. Okay, so the issue we are having now is we practically need this shape or shadow to fall out from the bottom part alone and not affecting the top side. So what do we do here? We select on that part. We can use the eraser tool. Could increase the size of the eraser tool. Okay, we can erase all the parts we don't want. The shapes we are creating simply or seamlessly, we could simply create the shapes to reflect just from this particular angle. Okay, now we select the shape builder tool and we can now shade our color. We've shaded our color, it's fine, it's fantastic. What we need to do next is to reduce the opacity to make it look more realistic. So fine. So as you can see, we have our shades, but we have a little bit of this here. Now we don't want that. We have a little bit of the shades here, we don't want that. So select on it again, select on your gradient tool and point it from this edge. By so doing, we are isolating this other part. So we have our shadow and we have our design. So now we are going to still do the same thing we did in this one. Select it, that we're going to ungroup. We are going to select only this one and we are going to delete it. Adjust this a little. Remember, we're just trying to put a little bit of customization to this. Now, one thing I love about me designing is when I make something work, it doesn't work well, I remove it and use what have been in existence. Okay, so when you try a styling, it doesn't work, you try your best to make it work, it doesn't work. For instance, we are going to remove this part. We're going to shift it a little inside. Fine. So we are good to go. If it doesn't work, you can pick on the previous styling you have. The idea for this is to make it look more realistic and more customized, as you can see. So we achieved what we want. So now let's try to style our color. We have done the typography, we have done the iconography. Now let's deal with the color. So we pick on this, let's find a color that works best for this particular brand. Pick the first color, we don't like it. Pick gold, we don't like that. Pick red, we don't like that. Depending on the color we want to work with, let's pick orange. Still doesn't make sense. I think the first color we stick on makes more sense. The purple makes more sense. Now, depending on your brand of the brand color the client provides to you, okay, that's what you're going to work with. You're not going to work with colors when you know that the brand doesn't support that color, except they say you should go with the flow. So finally, we have our design available. So we are going to recap this again. We made a very simple logo with styling all of this. So first off, we created the text typography on different categories like we have here. We could also try out all these fonts here, but remember, when you are changing a font, you are still changing the style of your icon. Okay, and the icon, the font type you're using also might reflect on the icon. For instance, we are using this. What type of font shape will work with this? Think, let me, before I write or before I draw, the box will work perfectly well because the shape of the text itself supports the box shape. Now, for instance, we use the circle shape here. You see, it's not looking very realistic. Okay, so we delete that. We don't want that. So first off, we created the typography which we want to use, and we loved this typography so well. What's the title? What's the name of this typography? Remofa. Okay, so I have all typography, all fonts in our mockup group. All fonts are available. All the fonts I used here are available in the mockup group. Okay, and I'm also going to teach you guys within the week, possibly tomorrow, on how to install all fonts at the same time into your PC, and it will reflect in your system softwares like Photoshop and CorelDRAW and Illustrator at the same time. So we learned first how to choose your typography by selecting multiple typography depending on the style you want to work with. First off, then pick the particular one you think you love the most. That's the most important thing. Or possibly select and separate all these fonts, screenshot them and send to a client to make their choice. Very important. So after that, we went on further towards customize our footer, which is the logo tagline. If there is no tagline, you can delete this and you see how it looks. So usually I like adding tagline to make everything look more balanced and shaped. So second, we applied a tagline and we aligned it accordingly. Remember the alignment protocol or procedure we used? We spaced each letter in a way that it is well spaced and we could reduce the size of it to respect that hierarchy the first title created, which is the name of the brand. If it is competing with the brand name, it means it becomes confusing for people to understand what the brand name actually is. So after we're done with that, we headed over to creating our shape, which is what we selected. We tried to create a circle shape in this same name we have created, a circle shape, a box shape, a polygon shape, and we tried them all out and we see the ones that work and the ones that didn't work before we go on with the one we selected. We selected the circle because the circle works well with this type of fonts. For me, for you, the box could work well, okay. But for beginners, the best font I suggest you use or start up learning with is the font called Poppins, which is this one over here. So Poppins have different categories or different font style or sizes which you can choose from. Okay, so start up with Poppins to make your work easier. Don't use cranky fonts for your design in this assignment. If you don't know how to pick or choose fonts, use simple fonts. Okay, don't use too stylish fonts. If you do, I'm going to cancel and you redo. So very simple, we chose a circle shape because we loved it so much. Now to make this look more realistic, we had to add the initial of this text. Remember, we are making a logo for a letter mark and the whole assignment will be based on a letter mark. The first letter of the logo title name you are choosing is practically what you are going to work with as the initial or the icon of the logo itself. The assignment will be provided in the group, not in this video. Okay, so now after we're done creating our shape, we just created a simple shape with that. We now place the shape here and removed it from the background. We are simply creating what we call this type of logo, or this kind of logo is a negative space logo. Okay, the kind of logo we are building is called a letter mark. The type is what? A negative space. A negative space is a kind of spaced logotype that you strike out a letter initial or an icon from what? The base icon. The base icon is the circle here, and the icon, the name icon or the logo icon is what? The icon inside of the base icon, which is what could call this the background icon. So after we're done creating that, we headed over to what? Creating a shadow to make it look more realistic. So just creating a shadow, just draw the line below the stuff you are dealing. You could create a shadow if you want. You could leave it if you don't want. You must not create a shadow. If you want to further make your shadow look more realistic, you could drag this up here. Okay, now expand it a little and then erase the parts that you don't want. These particular parts, you could just erase them off. How to erase them? Select this, use the eraser tool, hold the Alt key and click on parts you don't want. As simple as that, it is erased. Select on this, we don't want this. So next off, we could practically use the shape builder tool to extend these to these parts and also use the eraser, the shape builder tool to also erase those parts. As simple as that. Now we can now select only that shape and then make it what it. Okay, so we have another shadow, an extra shadow in the middle, and you see how this thing look more realistic now, looking more realistic than it is. So you can just play around with all of that. The next thing you could do is also creating a kind of top layer gradient on this particular gradient like we did previously. So you could also achieve that by selecting on the curvature tool. You must not do all of this, but the best you can do, just try it. Okay, so select on that, pick on this part. No, not the curvature tool. Suppose you use pen tool. Okay, pick on this part, pick on this part, pick on this part, and pick on this part. Just select that. Fine. So we have this shape. We are going to select to fill it in with this particular shape we have. So select the both of them, still use the shape builder tool and erase the parts we don't want. Now we are done with that. Select on that particular shape specifically, hit on the curvature tool, double click on this, and we got what we want. Now you can now create your shadows. Just style it the way you want. Okay, you can go closely and make it look seamless and more uniform. So we could extend this further, delete this, extend this further to this part. So we have it here, and we extend this part, this particular one, to this part. So still select on the both of them, use the eraser tool and erase the parts that are not supposed to be there. So now we've extended it. We could use this shape, select on it separately. Could use this shape and give our guide color. Just make something look realistic, just play around with it. Okay, so it's becoming a little more interesting for me. So if you don't like it, you could pull that out. Something else we may need to do is this. Let's first create this. Let's get done with this. I need to be fast because I'm running out of time. It's about 1 hour of this course. So next thing we could do is creating a shape, a line above these particular shades. So select on the part, pick on this and pick on this other edge. Click on escape to leave this particular line. Escape will leave it. Then select on your curvature tool and make sure you curve it according to that particular line. Okay, so now we have that. You can switch it here, switch it to come to the downside, which makes it what? A line only at the top. Now we're done with that. Escape again. Now get over to the stroke. Click on this, show more options. Now in this stroke, we want this particular end of this stroke to be tiny and this particular end to be tiny and the center to be bold. How we do that is we select on this portfolio profile and select on this particular width part 1. So we're making the center big and the edges tiny. We are not going to experience that the way we want because we are not using the color we are supposed to use. So let's use the color we are supposed to use now. Select on this. We're going to pull in white to this part, then reduce the size of that shade. So let's use a little bit of gray. Fine. So let's see how this looks like. That doesn't look good to me. Let's make it a little more white. Fine. Okay, so we increase it a little. Fine. So we shade out. So the essence of this is to make your shapes. Could reduce this a little bit. Let's save 2 points. Fine. Is to make your shapes have little more effects at the edges. This make it look little more realistic. If you like it, you could go with it. You could reduce the opacity a little. Let's make the opacity 35 and increase the stroke size, and that is it. 35 is not cool. Let's make it about 60 or 65. That's fine. So 60 or 65 is still okay, but it's too much. So just play around with your stuff. Okay, so now we've created the shape and we've created some stuffs around it, and this makes it look a little more busy. So if your work is looking busy, it doesn't make much sense. So we are deleting this and we are deleting this, and we are having it as simple as this. Okay, so I'm going to show you how we could convert this to a flat shape in Photoshop when we want to make a mock-up. We could be using this to make mock-ups in the future when we want to make or treat on that particular course. So first off, I've talked about the guideline on how we created the typography, on how we created the footer, which is the motto or the tagline, on how we created the shape by choosing the type of shape we want based on the particular brand we are dealing on. And we talked about creating an icon for that particular shape, which we use the initials. Talked about some other effects like the shadows, which we just added here, the shadow here, and also the shadow here, which we just added. And we talked about the color and color grades. We could practically use single color for this if we want to, as you can see. Okay, we could use single color depending on the brand color. We could use single colors for this if you want to. You could use this single color, it still look more realistic. I even love this most. Okay, so depending on the color the brand is working with, you could use that, and that draws us to the end of our course. So practically, you will be receiving how to create the wreath. If in case the client's brand is registered, you could just create a registry sign, create a circle, and convert it to a stroke, and place it in between the R. Let's increase the size. Select the both of them, both of it, and can group it. I have a course I talked about grouping. So this could go either here if the logo is alone, or go at this other edge. Okay, wherever it works for you, fine. So that's practically it, and your assignment will be ready with you in the group. And if you have any question about these other materials will be provided you. This is my personal color gradients, the color palettes I created for works. It will be provided for you so you could make use of. I've taught you guys how to create gradients and also show you the issues or possible problems you could face while creating gradients and how to avoid them. So that is it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be waiting for your assignment in the group, and I'll give you more further information on what to do and how to go about it from the group. Enjoy the rest of your day. Once again, my name is Manuel, signing off.